Let's shift our focus now to that 2022 primary you just heard me talking about with President Trump. The latest polling, as I mentioned, shows really a red wave starting to materialize here. Isn't it funny how it always tightens right before Election Day? You know, Democrats are really going to defy everything, and then you get to mid-October and it's, oh, things are tightening. Let's talk about that and what to expect in the next midterms with our good friend Matt Schlapp. He is the chairman of the American Conservative Union. That's the place that puts on CPAC on his beautiful new set there for your streaming show, CPAC Now, it's called?
That's right.
CPAC Now. I only know that because sometimes you let me be on. Matt, thanks for joining us tonight.
Great to be with you, Larry.
So seriously, these polls really over the weekend, extraordinary, especially Biden's. I saw this was extraordinary. People who strongly disapprove of Joe Biden right now is actually a bigger number than people who just generically vote Democrat. That's gigantic. To me, it's telling me that the red wave really is coming.
Yeah, Larry, the polling that's out is inaccurate. This will be a shock to you. They say in the Senate races over the last couple cycles, polling has been off as many as 6 points. So when you go to Real Clear Politics or whatever your site, 529 or whatever your site of choice is, you could probably, add 5 to the Republicans. So what does that mean? That means that these Senate races are much more competitive, and the Republicans are leading in almost every one of the battleground seats. But we're being told differently. We're being told, boy, this big red wave really didn't materialize. It is absolutely materializing. Their numbers are wrong again, and it's done, I think, to try to discourage red voters.
Well, and Matt, have you noticed a trend here over the last few weeks? You guys at CPAC are so great at the cancel culture stuff, right? America uncanceled. You can't cancel us because we happen to be conservative. And look at what they're already starting to do with Carrie Lake and with Herschel Walker, because they dare to be a woman or a black man, respectively, who don't march in lockstep with Democrats. They're trying to cancel them before they even win their elections.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And of course, the only thing they have left are these October surprises, personal problems in people's lives. By the way, everyone who runs for office is a human being, and they've made huge mistakes, as we all have. And it's amazing how they all just kind of come out in the last 2 or 3 weeks, all done with the media and orchestration with Democrat operatives. And, but beyond that, Larry, they don't have anything to talk about inflation. They don't have anything to talk about the economy. Democrats don't have anything to offer when it comes to, their diplomacy, both failed diplomacy with the prince in Saudi Arabia, obviously Afghanistan. Now we have Ukraine. It really, even people who don't love Trump himself, and I do, but there are people who don't, there is this growing feeling like his policies just work for people. No matter what, no matter what that person's politics were, his policies made our lives better.
Yeah. Yeah, and the politicians that are running in this 2022 midterm, they're the ones who have embraced Trump and embraced his policies, embraced America first, and that's pretty much most of them. They're winning, running away. The only ones who seem to be having challenges right now are, shockingly, Matt, in those same states where we saw some irregularities in the 2020 election. I'm talking about Pennsylvania, I'm talking about Wisconsin, I'm talking about Michigan, and I'm talking about Arizona and Georgia. Isn't it surprising there that those states are the outliers again?
Yeah, and Nevada.
Nevada, thank you. Yeah.
I think that the systemic problems with voter irregularity in those states were not solved by anything that's happened in the last 2 years. But I do think there's a large percentage of voters that think that if you voted for Trump, you got screwed in 2020. And I think in the Georgia runoffs right after that 2020 race, a lot of voters said, what's the use of voting?
Yeah.
That's kind of pouting, and that's not really going to get it done. I think over the course of the last 18 months, they've gotten quite fired up. If you feel like there was impropriety and fraud in the last election, as I do, to a level we've never seen before, I think it's got these voters even more engaged in voting and maybe taking one of these Senate seats back in Georgia. But you're right, the systemic problems, look, it's very simple, Larry. When the Democratic Party embraced Marxism so aggressively and so publicly as they have with Black Lives Matter and critical race theory and critical gender theory and all this craziness, at the same time that Republicans have been shut out at all these major cities. There's no Republicans left in these cities in major positions of political influence. So putting those things together, a Democratic Party that's radicalized and controls universally 100% these big cities, Republicans are shut out. And by the way, election fraud in the scheme of things is a small crime compared to the crimes of burning down cities, assassinating cops, crime waves where people are dead on the street. I mean, why would we put this past them?
Yeah. And you've got a candidate in John Fetterman in Pennsylvania who literally is on the record constantly saying that he wants to empty the prisons of that state of the worst criminals. Let's get to those issues because it's interesting. I even have some Republican and conservative friends here in Washington who really were concerned about what was called Roe-vember, right? That the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade was really going to have an impact on certain races this November. But if you look at the last poll showing issues right now, the people who say abortion is the number one issue, it's 5% of the voters, Matt, and that pretty much tracks with where it's been for the last 30 years.
Yeah, we've been tracking abortion since 1973, and there are two lessons from this political fight for 50 years. The first is that women vote more pro-life than men, and women are more pro-life than men. It's never discussed by the media. The second thing is that there are more pro-life voters, like my mom, who will vote on that issue than there are pro-choice voters who will vote on the abortion question. So it always accrues to the benefit in almost every jurisdiction to the pro-life candidate, but the media will never understand that. So guess what will happen when we get done with this election cycle? We will find that, yes, there was a lot of energy in pro-choice circles, and there were a lot of single women who got even more angry at the Republicans than they were before, even though they were already on a Richter scale like a 10 already, but now they're a 10 plus. Right. They were still going to vote that way anyway. It didn't really make a difference in the fact that there's a subterranean pro-life advantage in the electorate.
But what's interesting is I think Democrats, because this is where the media bias actually works against Democrats, because they all bought into it. That whole vacuum and wind tunnel and where they're all agreeing with each other. So they were so sure that the abortion issue was going to be so big that they wasted pretty much the last 4 or 5 months talking about that instead of talking about crime, instead of talking about the economy.
The other thing they screwed up on is that they didn't come up with an answer for this. Would there be any abortion that you would regulate in 9 months or right after birth? All these candidates keep giving the same answer, which is, I'm not going to answer that question, or you're being political, or no, I wouldn't regulate any abortions. And in every one of these debates, it's a flop of an answer. That is way extreme from where the American people are.
Oh, it's a great observation. And by the way, I don't know who figured it out, but that language is so important, man. And you know this. I mean, you're a professional communicator. The question to a Democrat saying, is there any limit you would put on abortion? I mean, because those words are powerful. And the answer is no, there is no limit.
Can you believe that? Even women who were running on women's empowerment, as if that has anything to do with abortion, but even they won't say that they would be opposed to abortion in order to kill an unborn girl baby because of gender selection in abortion. Yeah. Even that's something that only the Chinese used to talk about. Yeah. And even that they won't say is wrong.
Meanwhile, again, coming off the heels of our interview with President Trump, and of course, I wasn't going to insult him by asking him if he was going to run because he's not going to announce it on this show. But when do you expect an announcement one way or the other from President Trump?
Well, the first thing is that he's going to do what he wants to do on his own time.
CPAC is coming up. It's in February. That'd be amazing.
That would be amazing. But I think it's good that he held his fire until, or that he's going to hold his fire until after the election. I think it's going to be a huge red wave. I think he's the number one voice on the red side in terms of that big victory. And I think he ought to do it soon thereafter. If it's in his heart to running for president is about the hardest thing you could do physically, emotionally, spiritually. If he's really got it in him, then he ought to do it soon after this big red wave is apparent.
All right, and real fast, just an exit question. CPAC is back in the nation's capital this year. You won't have Larry Hogan to worry about in Annapolis, Maryland.
Larry Hogan, we actually invited him his first year as governor, and he didn't even respond to the letter. So I guess that was kind of a hint, a cold shoulder. Yeah. But we're very happy to have it back here.
Great.
First 4 days in March.
Excellent. And we will be live. O'Connor Tonight will be doing the show from CPAC. Thanks, Matt. More to come.
Thank you, Larry.
On O'Connor Tonight.